Hello, everyone. I guess some of you might want to see my face or whatever. I'm not going to be using my webcam. Hi, everyone. Because it tends to shrink the image of my screen on your screens. So we're going to go through a little bit of, well, I guess I have to introduce myself a little bit. I work for the Whatcom Conservation District. I've been using GIS for, 23 years now. Oh, geez, I'm old. I've been with the district for 21 years and 2 days. So I've been around a while, and I'm also the admin for their ArcGIS Online for conservation districts in this state. So if you do have any GIS questions, you feel free to give me a call or an email. What we're going to go over today is getting Collector on an iPad. And I'm using an iPad now. You can use an Android phone or iPhone if you wanted to, but we're going to use an iPad because it's a little easier to manage doing a broadcast like this. We're going to first, well, I guess people need to know why they need to use Collector. A couple of the reasons you would use Collector out in the field would be essentially collecting data out in the field. And there's two main ways that you can collect data through ArcGIS Online, and one is Collector, and the other is Survey 123. As the name says, it's more about, Survey 123 is more about doing surveys out in the field, and you're collecting data like points. You can now do lines and polygons and that kind of stuff. But Collector is more about, you can actually manipulate the polygons and the points and the lines a little bit out in the field a lot better than you can with Survey 123. So you can manipulate the data instead of just collecting the data. You can still collect the data, of course, in Collector, but you just try to pick which one's the most useful for your application. We've used Collector out in the field for all of the crop mapping that we've done for WSDA since I think 2014. And I think we were the first persons to try that, and now they've got everyone doing that. We do our livestock surveys out in the field. We do different windshield surveys out in the field with iPads, and it works pretty well. There is a new version of Collector out there. You can see up here the classic. That is the classic Collector, and get rid of. Oh, I'm touching the wrong screen. There we go. This is the old Collector, and it still works. One of the reasons we still use it is because we also have some iPads that can't run the new Collector because they're too old. So it will work. The newer Collector, just called, it's right here. That one it works a lot better, and I'll show you a example of a project that we're doing. We're doing a study, NWQI, can't remember what the NWQI stands for, but we did one back in 2016 and for a 10-mile watershed, and we're doing another one for a couple of the watersheds up by Linden. And we have someone, she's currently going out a few times a week collecting data and essentially field checking all the information on here. So when she's driving around by car, she can go in and select a field, and if she wanted to, she can go in and edit that field. If it's cancel, if it's changed its crop or something like that. She can also go in and change the points. This is a drip irrigation. She can change it to big gun if she wants. Whoops, wrong button. And then we have the yellow ones are actually livestock. Some of them are based in the middle of the polygon for our fields. And she can go in and edit any of this information. And once she's done collecting all that information out in the field, we can download that and continue on with our study. That's just one application that we're using. There's many districts out there that have used it for a lot of different things. Let's change that. And I'm going to go through what a project, we're just going to set up a project of doing a livestock survey by going out in a car. And I'm going to try to go through as much as I can. And if you do have any questions, please raise your hand. And darn it, Jan or Alicia will actually call on you and hopefully stop me in the middle of my presentation, because going to the end it'll be a little harder to answer the question after I've already gone through a lot of stuff. Ooh, we have 32 attendees today. Yep, my biggest class ever. Yay! So first of all, you need to create a folder on ArcGIS Online, and that's just, you just need to go in and create a folder. This is my account, so it may not look exactly like your account because I am admin for our organization. And if you do not have an ArcGIS Online account by now, please let me know and I can set you up with one. It's for our entire state conservation districts, and thank you to the Commission for providing the funding to actually do this. I have created a folder under my account, under contents, and I just called it Wade. So we'll get back to what we're going to put in here in a few minutes. So one of the ways that you can actually add data to ArcGIS Online is doing it through ArcGIS Pro. So ArcGIS Pro is the new version of ArcMap. I think it came out in 2014, 2015, something like that, and it's gotten better as we've gone along. It's not replacing it in every means, but it is slowly being used more than ArcMap. And I use both. But one great thing about ArcGIS Pro is it deals with online data a lot better and a lot smoother. So when I'm uploading data from my data sets, I'm using ArcGIS Pro to do that. And I'll show you how easy it is in here. I'm not even going to go over the ArcMap because it's a lot more complicated and a lot more clunky. But I do use ArcMap mostly. I still use ArcMap the most, but for uploading data, I use Pro. And to upload some data, I have some land use data. I'm just doing a sample set of the data I showed earlier, and I've already got it symbolized by the major primary categories that we have. You can see the attribute table here. And we have a primary category, a secondary category, and then both of them together. And just acres and notes. And there's other things that we collect, but I wanted to simplify it for our uses today. And to upload something to ArcGIS Online, all you got to do is right click on it and go down to sharing and share this web layer. Now there is an overwrite web layer. So if you shared a layer and you figured out you did something wrong, or you want to add something, you can actually overwrite a layer. But today we're just sharing a web layer. And you can see on the right-hand side over here that we've come up with this window, and I'm going to put in a summary, land use, and I'm going to tag it with Wade and land use. This is helpful when you're searching for data sets, or other people are searching for data sets. The more tags, the more useful it might be to actually, for someone to actually find it. Especially when you get massive amounts of data sets, 5 years down the line. And this is a feature layer. I'm going to pick the location, and I'm going to choose my Wade folder that I showed you earlier on ArcGIS Online. And this was where I can also share it with multiple people or groups. So I have the Washington CDs is our entire organization. You probably will never use that. The everyone means everyone. The entire world will be able to see this. But we have other groups that I'm part of that you can share. This is kind of the security group. So if I just want to share it with my office, it's WCD office. If I want to share it with WSDA, it's WSDA, and then a clean water group, and so on and so forth. I'm not sharing it with anyone right now, but if someone can't see that map, someone else can't see the map that you've created on their iPad, you got to check your groups and see if it's at all those maps and data sets are shared to the correct people. And I will, actually, I want to configure a little bit and go through some of this. You want to always check this stuff and set it. The time zone for our organization will default to Pacific time. I do it anyways, just to be on the safe side. And then there's more information in here that you might want to play with, but it's good to know that's there. And then we can publish it, and it will analyze the data before it actually publishes it. So what that means is it will go through and make sure that you have a summary, you have tags, and that it will actually work up there. Sometimes you will get notifications that you need a summary, or you need to add something in your data set to actually put it up online. So while that is being uploaded, I'm going to switch over because I'm going slower than I thought I was. And I'm going to switch back to ArcGIS Online. And you notice it hasn't shown up yet in here. But what we're going to do while we're waiting for that, I'm going to create another data set. And I'm just going to create now this is creating it just on ArcGIS Online. And ArcGIS Online has come a long way. So you have a lot of features now that you can create, and settings that you can create straight on ArcGIS Online instead of doing it on your desktop first. So I'm just going to create a feature layer. I'm going to fly through this pretty quick. There's a lot of templates in here. One of the biggest ones is like if you want to do field notes and tracking locations, points, lines, polygons, I'm going to do one straight from scratch. And you can go into each one of these and find your what works best for you. I'm just doing points, and I'm going to create it. Point layer, and here's where you can capture GPS receiver information. I'm not going to do that for now. And then we're going to set our extent. You want to zoom into the area that you're going to use, because this is the default extent that it will zoom to when you're using it. I'm going to just put it livestock and livestock. Get rid of that. Wade, livestock. And save it in the wave folder, and I'm going to hit done. Well, I'm just going to put a 2. I created one yesterday, so that's what it was telling me. There's already one in there. So I'm just going to put a 2 at the end and use that. And it'll take a second to do. And while we're waiting for that, we can go back to this. Yep, it uploaded. So now I'm done with ArcGIS Pro. And it should refresh here and show both of them on there. Oh, nope, it's going directly into the Livestock 2 data. And here is the information on the Livestock layer. You can do your descriptions, has more information here. And when you create a feature set on ArcGIS Online, some of the templates may enable attachments right away. So you can disable them here if you want to. So what that means is anyone can take a folder or upload a file, whether you want to be able to do that or not. Terms of use, but up here it is the data. We'll come back to that in a second. The visualization is where you can set a default visualization. So the symbology, how you want it to show up. I'm going to change that real quick. And I'm just going to change the symbol to a big red button. Okay, okay. And now it has a default symbolization. You can also change visibility and a whole bunch of other things in here if you'd like. We're going to save that. Usage statistics, how many people have used it. Obviously, there's nothing in here. Settings is very important. On the default, if you create one online, it will already have editing enabled here. But if you upload it, and we'll see this in a second with the data I uploaded from ArcGIS Pro, this may not be enabled, and neither may this right here, this enable sync. Without that turned on the map and all the data sets that you have in that map, your map will not be able to be seen in Collector. Or it may be able to be seen, or it might with the latest Collector, but it won't be able to be synced for offline use. That's for sure. So you have to have that enabled. And a lot of people have had problems with getting Collector to work because their data has not been able to be seen on Collector. And one little data set didn't have enable sync, or it didn't have editing turned on. And some of the other editing features in here, you can keep track of when it was created, when it was updated, and all this extra stuff. We're going to skip over that because it's already done. But we are going to go back to data, the data tab, and we're going to hit fields. And I want to add a couple of fields in here. One is cows, and I want it as a integer, and I'm going to default it to 0. And I'm going to allow null values. I don't want to allow null values. Let's see. Wait a minute. This screwed me up yesterday. Essentially, it makes it a required if you don't check that. I think we'll find out. I ran into that issue yesterday. Let's do both. Haha. And I'm going to do horse. Zero. Uncheck it. Add new field. And other integer 0. Allow no values. Yes. And then one more for notes. I tend to always leave a notes field when I'm doing collecting data out in the field, because someone may want to type something out that says, okay, I'm going to come back and check this later on. And having a notes field is nice for that. And here you can see all of the new fields. And we're done with creating fields. And you can, oh, well, no, we're not. Haha, we forgot something. So up until about a year ago, you couldn't create domains in here. So what they call it, create list here. And I'm going to create a list of just zeros and ones so that each one of these has a yes, no answer essentially. So 0 for no and 1 for yes. And this is creating essentially drop-down menus so that your user does not have to put in yes, there's something here, no, there's not, and so on and so forth. They can just use the drop-down and it's done. And then notes doesn't need any drop-downs. And we'll close. So now we can go from data to overview, and I'm going from here. I could go back to content and see it defaults back to the location of your last content folder. And I need to go into land use and make sure the settings are correct to be able to use it in collector. So we go into settings, and I want to enable editing and enable sync. And I also want to keep track of who created the last updates. So without doing this, if you didn't do this, if the enable sync, it wouldn't be able to go offline. So you'd have to have a data connection the entire time, which kind of kills the idea of going out in the field. And then enable editing allows me to edit out in the field. I'm going to hit save. And it's saving. And then I'm going to go back to the overview, and I'm just going to open in map view. Now I could go back to contents and create a new map, but this is just a simpler way to do that. So I've got land use in here. I need to add some more information. So I'm going to add search for layers, and it usually puts the latest ones up, the latest ones that you've been using up first. I'm going to hit plus, but I need my waterways, which is under streams. So this is a data set that I already have up. So I'm just going to add that. And I already know that that's already been enabled for syncing. It is not enabled for editing though. So you can't edit it while you're out there. And how do we want, yep, they're ordered correctly. But I need a base map. I'm going to change the base map, and I'm going to change this land use so that it has some transparency to it. I'm just going to do 50. And I'm kind of going through this pretty quick because we only got a half an hour left, or 40 minutes or 20 minutes left, and we want to get some questions in. So I have this map ready to go. Let's make sure, let me check my notes real quick. Oh, you can also add a layer, just like I did the Livestock 2. You can add a tracking layer. So it will track where you're going. So it'll take a point every 5 minutes. If you're going all over the county, you can use that track layer that will create a point every 5 minutes, and you can make it totally invisible on your map so you don't see it, but it can track where you've been. So if you're out there and you're doing a survey of an entire county, you can actually track where you've been, and other people can track where you've been. So you can say, this location's already been done, I need to be over here this time. So I'm going to save this map. I'm just going to call it livestock or Wade, and Wade. Since I'm going to be deleting this at the end of the day anyways. So now I have a map, but I may want to share this with other people. So here you can share it with other people, other groups and that kind of stuff, so that you can do that directly from this map. And now that map should be available. Should. It's always should. Let's see if it works. Oh, yeah. Choose the right screen to click. There we go. Livestock for Wade. There it is. So we have a couple of options here. If you hit the ellipses over there, you can get map details, or you can add an offline area. And we can get add offline area here in a second, but that will take some time. And I click on that map, and you'll notice at the top, it says GPS accuracy is whatever, and it's required to be 30 feet. Well, I'm in my house. I'm not going to get good GPS in my house. So you can, if we go back to maps real quick, cancel. You can click on your profile up at the top right over here, and you can choose the accuracy that you want. Inches, 95% accuracy. You can choose all those settings, including averaging GPS. So you can set it for taking 5 points and averaging those 5 points. That does come in handy when you're up in the mountains. It takes a little longer to actually run, but it does help. And then a whole bunch of other settings in here, like units and directions, download and sync, that kind of stuff. So be aware that that's up there. And we'll go back into livestock from Wave. Oh, look, that's where I live. So it defaults to where you're located, where that iPad is located. And hopefully there's our data set. So we have our data set. You can click on one of the images and you can see it. And you can also click up here and see the layers. So I don't need my streams on right now, so I'm going to turn off my streams and close that box. And now I can go in there and say, okay, I like that. That's pasture. If I need to edit it, I can. And I can add points and do all that kind of stuff. And you're going to essentially move the background around instead of trying to do it with your finger. So I'm just scrolling the background with my finger instead of using my finger to create a point. So that where that little where this is, we'll create a point. So we want to cancel out of that, but we do, darn it. We want to add a new feature, which is this button down here. And we can add a new feature. Of course, it defaults back to where the iPad is because it thinks, hey, you're going to add a feature where you're located. So it'll be a lot easier out in the field. So here you'll see new feature for my livestock 2. Is it crop development? I can add these polygons, but what I want is the new feature. So I'm going to click on that and it's going to put a point there. And I can say, hey, there's something there, and that little asterisk on horse, that means I need to put something in there. So it should have been left checked instead of because it doesn't allow null values. And then if I want notes, I can put in yeah, la 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 la, yay, done. And then I can also take a photo. So I'm going to take a photo of outside and use photo. And there I have photo and update point. And you notice up in the top right, the submit doesn't have anything there. Well, it's asking for more information. Why doesn't it? Not a valid, uh-oh, I turned that, that's not good. Well, I made my notes integer instead of text, and that was not a good idea. So now that there's no errors down there, I had an error down here beforehand. Now I can click on submit, and now I have a point out in the field. And you can make that much more fluid if you want, allowing null values and all that kind of stuff, so people don't need to actually put stuff in if they don't need to. You can do whatever you want. It may take a few times to go through and double check all this stuff. And please go outside when you're creating a map in your office. Don't create the map, upload it to your iPad, and then go out in the field. Create a map, walk outside, test it, and do something, because you can go through and create a point or a polygon or whatnot and not submit it. You can create that point, you can do all that stuff without submitting it. So you're testing it outside, because there are plenty of times that I've gone outside, tested it, and it's like, oh no, we need to fix this. We need to put drop downs in. We need to make this required, that kind of stuff. So always test your points out in the field. So yeah, we can go in here and edit that as well if we want to. We can also copy, delete. We can make polygons. How much time do I have? Not much. And I'm gonna make a crop. And look at that. It defaults back to where I am. And you can set this to actually follow me. Start streaming will actually follow your GPS location as you go, so you can create a polygon by walking around, let's say a wetland or a pond or something like that. But we're just going to add a point, add a point, add a point, and add a point. Obviously, I'm doing this for just whatever, just for fun of it, just for showing it. I'm going to do caneberry, select category, crop nursery, acres, 34 if you know it. You can always calculate the acres later on. And then notes. Hi. Done. And then submit. And it will now have a polygon in there. And you have all the information right there. And if I wanted to, I could, if I go back in ArcGIS Online, I can actually set it so it will take a picture. So if you need to go offline, you need to use this ellipse right here and add an offline area. That reload map comes in handy if you make changes in ArcGIS Online to the map and you need to reload it. That is very handy. Add an offline area. So it's going to default to that area, and you can actually set it for different layers that you want to take offline or not. If you have a ton of layers, you may not want to take all of them out in the field, but you get that choice. You can also change the bookmarks and level of detail. We want the detail, which means the level of detail down here means how detailed. So when you zoom in, how detailed do you want that aerial photo? We want it at room level because that gives you the best detail. But if you're doing a massive, like county-wide, you want to change that level of detail because you don't want your downloaded map to be, 10 gigabytes. So I believe you can actually set it so it'll actually tell you how big it is. So I'm going to change that to neighborhood, so it'll take less time to download, and it will download. And it gives you the status of your download. And up here, you get other options, and I believe you can delete the maps as well from in here. I think, I didn't go over this. I skipped over it trying to go fast. While that's downloading, you can change your pop-ups in here. So configuring your pop-ups, what will show up in your attribute table on the offline map. So you can actually say, okay, which ones do I want to show up? Do I want the global? Do we need the shape area? Do we not? you can change that in here and change some of the settings for some of them as well. So shape area, do you want it 2 decimal places? Do you want to use 1,000 operator? That kind of thing. So that's very handy if you want to change the pop-up and what information you want to show on the map when it's in collector. This is where you do it. Okie doke, back to this, and it's still downloading. So this is a very small area, and now you know why when I'm doing a large area, I do it usually at the end of the day, or if someone's going out in the field, I tell them, okay, start your download either the night before or like an hour before, because it takes a long time to do. And once you get, 10 different data sets on that map and it's county-wide, it can get really, really big. And this is just a tiny little small area with very bad resolution, but I'm also streaming and it's over Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. So we'll let that download for now. I think I'm done with what I have to go over. Are there any questions?
We have one comment right now in the question box, some appreciation from Ashley. She says, Andrew, you are my hero. I have had issues with syncing, and I think it was changing the fields in the settings tab. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yep. I need a cape since I'm the hero. I need a cape. Any other questions? Nothing?
Oh, I've got one hand raised here. Let's see. Ryan, go ahead.
Hey, Andrew, this is Ryan. My question is, can you use a device that runs on Windows? I have a ruggedized tablet that I use for surveying, and I'm wondering if that could be used.
So at this time, it cannot be used. At least last time I heard about it. I haven't checked lately, but my guess is it's not up to the same usefulness as either Android or iPad. But I heard they were working on it, and there are ways to get around it. But I wouldn't count on it. So I essentially I don't know at this time. I can do a Google search pretty quick, but then everyone would see everything. Does that answer your question? Yeah, essentially I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't use it on Windows, mostly because our office, we have enough iPads and surfaces don't work very well out in the field for us, because we're running around. The iPads are just much more conducive to working in the field, collecting data like that, than the surfaces are.
Okay. We have a question here from Ashley. She says, can you show where the download offline was? Again, I missed that.
Download offline. Yes. Well, that's this ellipse. Is this what they're talking about? It would say, instead of sync, it would say download offline, I believe. So back here, let's say that one, add to offline area. Oop. And some of these are not enabled for use offline. Oh, and yes, I've created a map for my trip to Hawaii so I could track where I was in the plane. It's, yeah, weird things that you come up with while sitting in a airport. But I did the same thing to going to England. I could actually pull up my iPad and see where I was. Does that answer that question?
Well, we have a follow-up. How do you enable the ability to download offline?
So let's go back to the content. So each one of these in settings, let's go for the web map per se. Each one of these in settings has something like enable offline use. So this is what it looks like when it's a map. And there's a whole bunch of advanced options and that kind of stuff that you can get into, but that will default for you. But then there's also, that was map. This is for the feature. Right here, enable sync. Why they call it two different things in two different areas, I'm not sure. But that's where you enable the offline use of that data, or not enable it in some cases. And then make sure you enable editing if you need to edit it.
Okay, we have another question here from Alan. Is Collector available for Windows machines? I'm not sure if that was the same thing
Yeah, that
Ryan
was the
wondering.
same question. Okay, since it's done twice, we can just ESRI Collector for Windows. Oh, look, hey, it is. That, guess it is. See, I didn't even know that. And it's been 2015? What? So, yes. I wonder how to get it, though. Collector for ArcGIS. By capture. Nope. We'll go back. The Windows Store. There you go. I could put it on here if I wanted to. Let's get rid of that. Don't know what it looks like. Yeah. Why not? Are there any other questions while I'm going totally off the rails here?
We do have another one just came in here. How do you upload the data collected in the field back into Arc Pro, from Elizabeth?
I didn't go over that, did I? One way to do it is just go to your catalog, and up here in project, there's also the portal. So I can go to the folder that I created today, open that up and say, that's the one I created. And I can open it and look at it. So you can easily do it this way and have it live if you want, or you can right click on it and just do a data export features. That's one way of doing it. In Pro, you can do the same thing in ArcMap, but you can also, you can go back to the overview here, and over here you can export the data. Now, you got to be careful on what you export here. So we enabled attachments on here, and we have a photo in there. So if we export to a shapefile, the photos will not be linked to the shapefile. I believe they're in the same zip file, but they're not linked to them. So you would have to relink them. Obviously, the CSV is not going to have photos in them either. KML will actually have the photos linked to them. But what most people are doing nowadays is exporting a file geodatabase. And how I do this is, file geodatabase, so I know it's an exported file geodatabase. I tag them, and what it will do, since there's nothing in here, Wade, I'll export it, and it will take a few minutes, especially if it's got attachments and a whole bunch of other data to it. The larger the data set, the longer it's going to take to export. And what it does, it does not export for download right away. What it does is export, it creates a file on ArcGIS Online that you can then download. So this is just one, I think we have one point with one photo on it, and it's creating a file geodatabase, and you notice how long it's taking just for that. So usually when I'm exporting, it will take a long time for a large data set. And now I have up here, you'll see land use file Geodatabase, and I spelled that wrong. Thank you. I'm sure some of you got that. And it'll say what kind right here. It's a file Geodatabase, and I can go over here and download it. This is also a way of archiving it, kind of thing. So if you want different steps and different steps along the line, like the first week, you can export a file Geodatabase and just keep it up here as a reference point of this is what we did the first week. And the second week, you can do an export, and the third week, and you can keep them all up here in case you need to go back. Because there's not a lot of undos if you're out in the field and you screw up. But there are ways of getting around that. And that's just two of the ways. There are other ways, but those are just two of the ways. I tend to like doing it from ArcGIS Pro because I don't end up creating another feature set. So I can go back to content and actually see my file Geodatabase. And I usually just bring it into ArcGIS Pro instead. So I'm not creating another layer in ArcGIS Online. Any other questions?
I don't. Oh, here we go. We've got another one. Leslie says, thank you for the information. When or if do you plan to have the webinar available for people who are unable to attend? And I can probably, well, Andrew, you might be helping us with that as well.
Yeah.
But
As soon as all the webinars are recorded and they're exported, and I believe they're putting them somewhere. As soon as I get them, I have to upload them to our YouTube channel, and then CTD will post them. So it'll probably be by the end of the week. But there's a lot of video that we have to go through.
yeah, we'll say next week for sure.
Yeah. As long as I don't have to go through and edit personal identifiable information off of the videos, it should be pretty quick.
Yeah, and those will be posted both on the Wade website and the CTD website, so
Yep.
both places. And you'll see a Gov Delivery Notice go out as well once we've got those up to let you know. So
I don't think we all need to see me do that. Any other questions?
yeah,
Any
we've still
questions
got.
for GIS in general too, if you want?
Give people a minute to type something in here if they want. Ashley asks, do you offer other training opportunities?
Yes. Well, besides Wade, which is usually hour and a half time, we have in the past done GIS classes, kind of an intro to GIS using farm planning. So farm planning for GIS, and then we do a advanced that goes over more of the spatial analyst, 3D analyst, and that kind of stuff, and a little bit of ArcGIS Online. And then it sounds like we're going to be doing a ArcGIS Pro training and an ArcGIS Online training. Some of those were planned for this year, and they all got canceled for the pandemic. So we will be doing that later on, probably in the year or in the winter next year, because it seems like people have more time in the winter. And if you do have any subjects that you want me to do, please let me know. We'll probably send out notifications that we're doing another training, who wants to be part of it, and what kind of subjects do you guys want to go over. So we'll probably be doing that in the next well, when we know we can actually do classes, and usually the classes are one west side, one central, and one east side. So it's kind of spread out depending on how many people and where we can get rooms. So training
Yeah,
is coming
we
down.
did have those classes planned with Andrew this year, and of course, things have changed. But just to put a plug in there, Andrew did provide us with a lot of links for the ArcGIS online trainings that can be done, and you can find those on the CTD website under
Yep.
trainings. So there's a lot of kind of self-guided things you can do online in the meantime, although it's always helpful to have someone there to ask questions of, but
Yeah.
there's a
So
number of links.
yeah, all the links that I gave them, I believe, is under My ESRI. So you see My ESRI up here. It's different than ArcGIS Online. Just know that, because it's the same account, but they called it differently. Why? They don't even know why, but it started as a very small thing and now it's very big. So I'm gonna click on my account and I'm gonna go to training. All the links go directly to the training that CTD put up, but I'm just gonna go here and show you some of the training that's there. And ESRI it's really good training out there, but it's not directed directly to the conservation district world. A lot of them use parcels and dealing with parcel creation and all that kind of stuff as examples. So you can see here, these are all our courses. We can search for ArcMap if we wanted to, getting started, mapping, analytics, a whole bunch of different things on here. But two things that you want to do, we do have a maintenance contract, so you can check that. So your maintenance, which means it'll be free, and we just want free. You can pay for these things, but you'll have to get a hold of me to be able to pay for them, because I've got almost all of you turned off to buy anything through My ESRI, so people don't accidentally get we don't accidentally get charged. So here's some of the things that are there. Oh, look, COVID response. But let's say we want to do ArcMap, and it's updating. ArcMap Fundamentals. It's 6 courses. It's a whole learning plan. Here's a 3-hour tutorial for ArcMap, just getting started. Here's one for Pro. There's a whole bunch, and each color is a different type of it. Like here's a web course, Python for everyone, a programming language, migrating to ArcGIS Pro. So there's tons of them up here. Like if I want to just do ArcMap there, fundamentals, another getting started, image processing, one's a web course. Some of these are actually videos taken from the ESRI user conference, which is coming up in July. And since we have a maintenance contract through ESRI, you can actually go to this year's ESRI user conference, because it's all virtual, and you can listen in on all the presentations. Essentially what we're doing with Wade this year, they're doing their own version of it. And a few people have actually registered for it, and you can register for free, and you go to all the classes or watch all the presentations. And some of them are really good presentations, and a lot of them are, I prefer the presentations that are about the products themselves, so you can get all the newest information and ask questions and that kind of stuff. And then there are a lot of presentations on different ways of using GIS, and tons of people out there, lots of conservation stuff. We got wildfire stuff, military stuff, city stuff, all that kind of stuff, those kind of presentations. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, just like any conference. Some of them pertain to you, some of them don't. But if you want to do that,
Sorry.
that's another way of learning.
Sorry to interrupt here, Andrew. We do
Yeah.
have another question I want to be able to ask here before the end of our session. This is from Elizabeth. She says, if not related to farm planning, can information gathered through Collector and ESRI online be requested through Washington's Public Record Act? And follow up, what are some organization tips to easily meet the requirements of the Records Act?
Since it is, we're local governments, everything can be requested. The only things that can't are stuff that is directly for a federal program. And then it has to go through that federal program that, like for CREP, it has to go through NRCS, the data, that kind of stuff. But all this stuff can be requested in a public records request. How do we deal with that? Every once in a while, I will download all this stuff, but I think I do it about twice a year. But it's not technically up to me to back up your data. I do back it up, and it takes a couple of days to do, I believe. But you have to figure out how you want to deal with all that, and it's not an easy thing to wrap your head around. But essentially, saving everything for 7 years is usually the best way of doing that. Do we? Yeah, that's up to your district.
Okay, thank you. Does
Mm-hmm.
anybody have any last burning question or comment for Andrew before we take our lunch break here? Okay. Elizabeth says, great webinar, thank you. And Ryan has one question. Ryan Bird says, can you mention again what situations you'd use ArcMap versus ArcGIS Pro?
Well, I use probably ArcMap for, well, most of the stuff I do still is ArcMap, probably about 60 to 70%. ArcPro runs better and runs faster because it's using multiple processors than ArcMap. ArcMap was created when computers actually had only one processor. Now you've got computers that have 16 processors, and ArcPro will actually use that, all 16 if you want. ArcMap does not. So depending on the analysis and the number crunching I'm doing, I may use Pro. The online stuff, I use Pro. I'm slowly switching over all of our stuff to Pro if I can, but there are some things that I can't switch over to Pro. I have an ArcGIS database that I cannot use on Pro because ArcGIS databases are no longer viewable by ArcGIS Pro, or they never have been. So I have to use ArcMap to do that. But I use them interchangeably. I'll do some things in ArcMap, and that same data set I will have up on ArcPro and do something else at the same time. So I'm using them interchangeably, and there's no set thing that I want to use it for except for access. I think that answers the question, sort of.
Okay. Yeah.